Bonjour everyone, Pantoufleee here today for a new video in which we're going to try to answer that simple question: what would happen if World of Tanks Blitz authorized those World War I tanks in the matchmaking? To do that, I'm playing on Panzer Cry of War, in which it's possible for us to simulate a 7 vs 7 based on World War I tank. So today we have the pleasure of playing three different tanks: the Mark IV that we already had a preview on in World of Tanks Blitz, or I should say about the Mark I when the 100th year of commemoration of World War I was on in World of Tanks Blitz 3 years ago, and the rest of the tank, the big boxy A7V, a German tank, to finish off with the FT17, good old nostalgia, because that tank was available in the French tech tree as a tier 1 back in the good old days before the 5.5 update. So let's not lose too much time and jump directly into it. Here we are playing on a desert map, and we start off with the Mark IV. The main thing about that tank is probably that it features two guns, one on each side of the tank, but we're not necessarily here to talk about the characteristics or the specs of those tanks because it's in another game, it's not World of Tanks Blitz. Now the real question is it possible to see those tanks in World of Tanks Blitz at one point? And I think it's yes. It's a straight answer, yes, for two reasons. The first and main one is that we already had the pleasure of playing those tanks for the 100th year of commemoration of World War I, because Wargaming organized an event in which you had the pleasure of playing the Mark I, a tier 1 British tank, for free. If I'm not mistaken, it was given for free to all the players, and you had a special matchmaking in which you could play against this tank only. That was good, that was fun. I didn't have the pleasure of playing it, but I saw replays and it really looked exciting. And a lot of players are looking forward for Wargaming to implement such a thing again. So maybe Wargaming is going to take that into consideration to allow us at one point to get them back. And the second thing that makes me think and wondering, is it possible to implement those tanks, is that at one point Wargaming will run out of tanks to implement into the game. At the moment it's definitely not the case, because if you take a look at the Big Brother World of Tanks PC, they have implemented way more tanks than the one we have in World of Tanks Blitz. But hey, at one point you will not be able to get anything beside maybe jumping off to another era and adding modern tanks like M1 Abrams, Leopard 2A6, all those kind of tanks, or lower down your criteria to tanks and slide down to the World War I tank. Hopefully, and I really hope that Wargaming will take that path sooner or later, because it's only my personal opinion, but I'm not in favor of modern tanks. I don't find them interesting at all because they all look the same. The main differences there are in between World War I and World War II tanks and the modern era is that in the modern era all the knowledge is shared, and it implies that all the tanks are looking the same with the exact same specs, etc, etc, which is not necessarily something interesting. Now, a second question we need to ask ourselves is, how would those tanks be implemented? I have quite a few leads for that. The first one being, let's implement them like they were part of the matchmaking. But it would require from Wargaming to increase the game to not tier 1 to tier 10, but to something like tier 1 to tier 12, because those tanks are not designed to face the actual tier 1 we have in World of Tanks Blitz. If you do that, they are going to get completely crushed. But judging by what Wargaming did during the 5.5 update, removing all the World War I tanks that we had the pleasure of playing before, such as the one you're seeing right now, the FT17, but there was also the Leash Tractor, if I'm not mistaken, the T1 Cunningham as well. There were plenty of those, and they were all removed. They were removed, but judging by what Wargaming is doing with the Battle Pass, etc., they are probably going to implement them again sooner or later in a special event, which is why I think that it could be the second lead. If Wargaming implements those tanks again, maybe they're going to have their special matchmaking, and from time to time, like we have in the Prizing and Mag games, we will be able to play them and have some fun, to remind us of the good old nostalgia where those tanks were permanently available in the tech tree and were the first experience everyone had with World of Tanks PC or even World of Tanks Blitz. But regardless, it's important for Wargaming to renew with the community, and this is something I feel the community would enjoy to see in the game. The last question of that video is, how many World War I tank could we see in Blitz? Because most of you are probably going to say, you know, Pantoufleee, not a lot of tanks were used during the World War I. It's true. Yeah, but there are a lot of prototypes, there are a lot of concepts in World War One that could be useful and could be funny to see in World of Tank Blitz. I mean, it wouldn't be a first if Wargaming decided all of a sudden to implement a tank that never existed. Look at the Smarsha, look at the concepts, all those kind of tanks. Every single one of them is based on something that was dreamed of and not necessarily implemented, and that saw the battlefield. Is it a problem? It can be for OGs or purists that really likes their tank the way they were historically in the game. But if you want something like that, just go to maybe War Thunder or even EL2 Sturmovik. There is a high realistic game for tanks. Good luck if you try it. My dad is playing it, and just taking a look at how he plays it, it's horrible. It's definitely not something for me. So I was saying, those tanks, there are plenty of them. They could even have their own tech tree. I don't think Wargaming will do something like that because it requires way more money than we can ever think of. But yeah, from time to time, adding those World War I tank maybe in Battle Pass, and maybe add a special matchmaking for them to be implemented in it so they can play against each other only. I'm not even expecting those to give you free stuff like making them premiums or something like that. No, just make them collectible and make them fight against each other in a traditional matchmaking or something you guys would prepare especially for them. Obviously, in the current state of the game, something like that is just a dream. You are not going to be able to see something like that. It's impossible. The Wargaming has way more things to work on before even thinking about adding those World War I tank. But maybe if Wargaming or Gaijin don't do it, Gaijin, by the way, are the War Thunder leaders, maybe you could expect one new tank company to rise and to offer us World War I tank, or even a whole FPS using British soldiers, German soldiers, tanks, everything. That would be awesome, and I would be glad to do a video on such a game. Hopefully you enjoyed that video, guys. If that's the case, feel free to subscribe, like, and share, and I'm gonna see you soon for a new one. Bye.